So before I start this video, I want to say that this video is from someone who does not know anything about Yu Yu Hakusho. I have not read the manga, nor have I watched the anime. My first exposure to Yu Yu Hakusho is the live action adaptation, and it's sort of planned because I was actually going to watch the anime, but the live action adaptation got announced around the same time, so I decided to wait for the live action and get my first Yu Yu Hakusho experience from a live action standpoint. I did this so I can get a feel of how someone who's not a fan of the source material would consume a live action adaptation, which has started to become a trend of sorts. I know this live action is not perfect and it does not represent what Yu Yu Hakusho really is, but this is how I wanted it to be. So recently the One Piece adaptation came out and it was a big hit because it made the One Piece watching experience better in some ways, even though it was not perfect. The Yu Yu Hakusho adaptation was also announced around the same time, and I was looking forward to watching it ever since because I always want to get into the series, but I didn't one way or another. I'm a big fan of Hunter x Hunter and Togashi's work, so I was pretty confident I would enjoy Yu Yu Hakusho anime. Even then, I decided to take this risk and watch the live action first. The very first thing pretty much anyone can understand is that it's heavily cut and condensed to fit into 5 episodes. The anime is 112 episodes, and cutting it down to 5 episodes is an insane jump. And you can see it when you watch the show because pretty much nothing connects, and you can see that stuff's missing everywhere. None of the characters have any development, none of them have any depth, and you don't feel like rooting for any character because you don't know them. Each character gets like a 5-minute introduction sequence apart from the main character Yusuke Urameshi, and you're almost expected to know what's coming. So all this points towards the show not being a good adaptation for someone who's watching it for the first time, and I guess that's true. If you're someone who has watched the anime, I think you're gonna enjoy this as an extension to the source material because there are good parts to the show, but it's definitely not in the narrative. The narrative, as I talked about before, is extremely rushed. Some people said it's the most important parts of Yu Yu Hakusho put into 5 episodes, and that might be true, but what makes a moment memorable or important is the development and build up to get there. But this live action does not have any of that, and everything happens quick. It feels very stupid. One of the biggest letdowns for me was the training arc. The entire training arc to beat the extremely powerful final boss was 1 episode. The episode where the main character is supposed to learn his true powers and unleash his potential is a single episode. And in that episode, we are also supposed to feel emotionally connected to the master. But none of this works out because we are supposed to eat it up in 40 minutes, and the next episode is the final boss fight. It's pretty clear that this live action took a very different approach to pacing and storytelling from One Piece because it was able to tell a very compelling story in 8 episodes. Would Yu Yu Hakusho have benefited from more episodes? Maybe, but I think the core formula of the way they decide to tell the story was wrong in the first place. And if you're not someone who has watched Yu Yu Hakusho before, you won't feel anything coming out of the show other than this being another live action slop. But I'm not gonna go completely nuclear on the show because, as I mentioned before, this show does have some good parts to it. First of all, unlike the One Piece live action, Yu Yu Hakusho is a Japanese live action. That means the language you're supposed to watch the show in is Japanese. All the characters are Japanese and everything takes place in Japan. Talking about the characters, like I said before, from a narrative standpoint, they're very weak, but the actors did a pretty good job and it feels grounded enough for a shonen live action. There are a couple of cringy anime coding here and there, but maybe that's just because I'm not Japanese.
Hey, I'm just a stupid gaijin, alright.
All that aside, my favorite part of this live action is the fights. The fights are actually some of the best fights I've seen in a live action adaptation, and I think the entire adaptation primarily focuses on fights instead of the narrative, and they nailed it. The fight choreography is beautiful, and almost the entire show is filled with fights. Like, you can skip to any part of the show and you'll probably in a fight scene. And as I said before, it's done beautifully. I do have some problems with the CGI, but the fights themselves are very well done, and that's a very strong point, and one of the reasons I would say watching this is not a complete bad idea, but not as an alternative to the anime or manga. Now I want to talk a little bit about the CGI. The CGI is not amazing, but it's good enough. I don't think Yu Yu Hakusho got a big budget, at least not as big as One Piece, which I believe cost around 6 to 7 million an episode, and even that's on the lower end when you look at it. The CGI can look okay at times, but it's never anything special. Some parts can look really terrible too, but overall it's average and serviceable. This show has tons of CGI, and I mean pretty much everything on screen is CGI almost all the time, and that can make it look a little plasticky, but hey, it is what it is. The fight scenes are good, but it would have been even better if they had a bigger budget perhaps. So should you be watching Yu Yu Hakusho live action? I'd say watch the anime first or read the manga, because I don't think this represents what Yu Yu Hakusho is, but if you're a Yu Yu Hakusho fan, I think this is a decent fan service with cool fights, or at least that's what I've heard. Condensing a huge anime is a hard task, and apart from One Piece, I don't think any other live action has pulled it off. Overall, I'll give this a 6.5 out of 10, and I hope Netflix continues to make better live action shows like One Piece. And as much of a live action hater I think the landscape is slowly changing, and we might be getting better shows soon. Anyway, that's about it. If you like this video, consider dropping a like down below. If you think I make good content, then consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.